Okay, so now from here, we're going to be continuing adding in a few more things here. But the first thing I want to do is something I've used very, very often, and I'm going to add it here again. We're going to go into utils and we're going to create a new file under hooks/forms/use_generate_id.ts. Now, if you've been watching a few of my videos, I actually have a specific video dedicated entirely to this. This is a hook that I find myself using a lot. I find it to be very, very useful in order to do what we need to do, which is generate unique IDs. One of the things with React applications, and Dan Abramov has actually touched on this before as well, is that you should avoid designing your React components as if they were singletons. Even if you're rendering only a React application, for example, a single time on your page, you don't actually want that React application to have unique IDs or somehow rely on these IDs to function properly. So that's something that you really have to take into consideration. And what that means is that within your code, you can't really have a hard-coded ID, because when you have a hard-coded ID, you can't repeat that component, because then if you repeat it twice, then you're technically breaking a lot of rules, and IDs should only be unique to your page. So we can get around that by using useGenerateID, and we're going to be writing that up here, and it's pretty much the same code. I've used this so many times. If you have a copy of it, just feel free to copy your version over and use that. It's pretty much the same thing. So what we're going to do is just write import useMemo from React. We're going to need that, and let's put in a seed counter of 0. And we're going to do const useGenerateID. We're going to do const seed is equal to useMemo. So we're going to memorize it so it only generates a single time when the component that's using it mounts, is in its initial render. And then we're going to put in a seed and then pass in a suffix, which is going to be a string. And we're going to do a seed hyphen and then suffix like so. So that's it for the useGenerateID function. Super simple, super easy to write up. And we're going to grab this useGenerateID. We're going to go here and we're going to import it. So import useGenerateID from, and I have an alias set up for utils. Where is it? Right here. So we can just do utils/hooks/forms/useGenerateID. And then once you have that, it should actually pick that up. But for some reason, it seems to be falling asleep and I can't figure it out. Anyways, we'll still use it here. So what we're going to do is just go over here and just write in label for is equal to generate ID username. And then this one here, we're going to pass in the ID, which is going to be generate ID username here as well. So these two need to match, and I forgot to write this. So we need to write in const generate ID is equal to use generate ID like so. We're going to go into password and do basically the same thing, except this one's going to be password, obviously. We're going to copy that part and then go here and do ID and do the same thing there. So now that we have this set up, we should be able to go into Chrome, and you'll notice here, if we click on password, the text, you see that it goes to them like so. And if we actually have a look at the IDs being generated, you notice that we have ID 0 username, which makes sense. And this one here is ID 0 password. Now, if we were to grab this component and we're going to go into initialized, and we're going to double render this switch. Why not? So we're going to grab, grab this and double render it like so. And what this should do is have two chat apps. And you can see we have 1 and we have 2. Now, beyond the autofocus, which I mean is a little bit kind of finicky in terms of UX, but I guess this isn't like a page breaking thing. So having autofocus where only one input gets focus is fine. I don't really see a way around that anyways. But for all other purposes, you'll notice that we have these two rendered. The page hasn't broken, which seems good. And if you have a look here, this one has ID 1 username and this one has ID 1 password. So if we click, that's fine. And this one up here has ID 0 username, and this one has ID 0 password, and we can do click. So there we go. That's what I was talking about. So now we can go back here and obviously get rid of that. So now back inside of our component here, we're going to continue building it out. The first thing we're going to do now is just add in some React hook form. So import use form from React hook form here like so. With React hook form, its API has kind of changed a little bit over the past few iterations and major versions. So if you are watching this in the future and the syntax is slightly different, forgive me, but I'm using major version 7. So if you want to install that, that's your choice, or you can somehow figure out how to use the latest version, whatever that might be. So now we're going to go here and do const, and we're going to pass in a register. I'm going to do use form, and we're actually going to pass in a use form data interface here like so. So React hook form actually has pretty good TypeScript integration, which is great. But basically what this allows us to do is define exactly what's getting passed into our form. So we do form data there like so, and then we can grab register and go onto our input group here. And it's really simple to use. Just literally do a spread with register username, not register, like so. And we're going to copy that and do the same thing on password. And we put it at the end there. And the reason we do that is just so we have these properties, if any of them get overridden by this. If you don't really want that to happen, then obviously you can put it anywhere here. It doesn't really bother me, but I like to put it at the end there, just to make sure we have those all applied. So now we have a username and password, and the best way to test that is do a watch, not form state. And we're going to put in a pre here, so pre, and then json.stringify, and then you can just run the watch function, which gives you back all the values from the form. And once you do that, you'll notice that we have a little thing here. And as you type the username and password, you notice that it populates it in there like so. So that means that that part is working, and React Hook form for now, we have integrated it well, which is good. So now we're going to be getting rid of watch here because we don't need that. Pass in handle submit, and we're going to apply that to the form. So on submit equals handle submit on submit. This is how React Hook form recommends we do it. And this one here, we're going to take in a password and a username, surprise, surprise. And this one's going to be of type form data. So that comes in handy here as well. Let's first just do an alert with username is username and password is password like so. And let's do that. Go back here and type in Lucas and hello. And I don't have any way to submit. And I can't press enter either. So we need to put in a submit button. And to do that, very simple, button intent equals intent.primary. So this is going to be a kind of bold looking button. It's going to be large as well. We don't need loading just yet. And we're going to put in a submit and type login there. So now let's grab this button, go up here and import it from Blueprint as well. And then import intent at the end. For that alphabetical order, and we should see the button. And I'm going to type and press that. I'm going to type in Lucas and password, and we get username is Lucas and password is password. So we're getting our values, and now they're getting passed in here. So we've already reached a really good point now where we have a form built out, and then the rest of it is really just how we submit this form and how we make use of it. So we're going to be obviously using the mutation. So what we essentially want to do is follow this, and we want to get something very similar to this. And you might be wondering why we need to return user and username. And the reason for that is actually because that's what user session gives us. And what we want to do is essentially go into the atom that we have here, user session, and we want to replace the value inside of here, which is currently null because we're on the login page, and we're going to be replacing it with the user session information that we need to put in. And we can find that information here inside of root, I believe. Is over here, you notice that we are querying for user and username, and we're putting that as the session. And because of that, we want to do the same thing inside of login. In a larger application, you can use stuff like GraphQL fragments to kind of handle this in a single source of truth. But for the time being, we're going to keep it relatively simple and going to refrain from doing that. So let's go up here and let's do import GQL and use mutation from Apollo/client. And we're going to go underneath the styled components and put in a mutation and just do GQL with backticks like that. And we're going to copy this whole thing here from the mutation there. We're going to tab that in. And instead of password and username obviously being Bob, we're going to do username and password here like that. And we're going to pass those in as variables here. So we have password is a string and username is also a string, and both are required. So we do something like that, and let's go here and let's do const create user session is equal to use mutation. So that's that mutation that we pass in. Make sure you do have the array destructuring. I think the second value here is the value that you get back. So you get back the tuple, and the tuple gives you the function and then the actual result at the end. So you actually do get the results if you need them. We don't really need it here because we're not looking to bind it into the React lifecycle. So we only need the create user session at the beginning. We're going to go here and do async. And obviously, instead of running this, we're going to do a const result is equal to await create user session. So you can just run it and then do variables and pass in the password and the username. So now that we've done that, let's do a console log of result and see what we get like so. And let's have a look, and we get Let's open this up, and we have Bob and password. Hopefully this works. And we get result is, and we have data, and we have the session. So now if we refresh the page, it will actually take us to main. Just log yourself back out. And we're back at login again. If we type in the incorrect credentials, you'll notice that we do get an error. So this is what happens is we get an Apollo error and it says invalid username. And you can obviously have a look at that over here as well. If we take this, and I'll call this one create user session broken. And this one will say password is wrong. And you see we get invalid password there like so. And if you type the invalid username, then it will show that there. This is not great. And the reason I say this is not great is because the best we can do from here is simply show this message to the user. It's really bad for us from a front-end perspective to be parsing this message. So we don't want to have some code here that says like, if message is equal to invalid username. Like this is really bad, right? Because for instance, someone could change the way we want to message this. Like it might be a product decision to say, we want to change the messaging from the front end. And then you kind of have to do a lot of stuff to work around that. And you have like different translations and different pieces of the truth in different places. It just gets really messy. So parsing the message here is a bad idea. But then beyond the message, we don't have any indicators to say exactly what happened and what went wrong. So that is something we will explore in a later video. We will have a look at how we can make these messages more friendly for the front end to handle and for our code to actually work with and kind of understand its context. And then also look at how we might be obfuscating or kind of removing these messages and simply replacing them with more generic errors so that we don't overexpose data in the front end. That might also be a consideration, but we'll be looking at that in a later session. For the time being though, we are going to finish this. So what we're going to do is just do a try block around it so we don't leak that error. We're going to do catch error like so. And we're actually going to be using something I really, really like. And this is a feature of Blueprint that I think is freaking awesome. We're going to be adding that inside of utils here as well. So just go into utils, right click again, new file under MISC for miscellaneous, and then toaster.ts. You don't have to put it here. If you have a better idea for where to put it, please tell me in the comments down below, but I'm just going to leave it here for now. So we're going to go into here and do import position and toaster from, once again, Blueprint.js core. And we're going to create a toaster using very few lines of code. Super simple, super straightforward. Const toaster equals a toaster.create. I'm going to put it in that position of top. So we're going to put it at the top of the page. And we're going to do export default toaster like so. And once you've done this, we can just import it. So we're going to go here and do import toaster from #util/misc for miscellaneous. And then we're going to do the toaster there like that. And now we're going to go back down here. And where we have this catch block, very simple, toaster.show, we're going to pass in an intent of danger. So like that, and then a message. And the message which is going to show is something went wrong, please try again. So we're going to keep that messaging relatively simple. Now that we've done this, we can go here and we can try to type the wrong thing. So wrong thing there. And you see we get these messages appearing at the top and we can simply get rid of them. If you are thinking of adding error handling, say for example, you're doing a tech test, you're applying for a job, and you need to add error handling, might I suggest you try something like a toaster. There are a couple names for this. I can't remember any of the other ones at the moment, but they're called toasters sometimes. They're also called different things. But these ones are very, very useful. And the reason is because they're super simple to implement and they look great, right? Like I don't have to go out here and design a place for my error in password to appear, an error for username, an error, for the general login breaking, and I have to add in like different lines of red text and then figure out when I need to add them, when they need to disappear. A really cheap and easy way, kind of life hack in coding, in order to show a really nice message for something like a tech test, or even for, your production application, is to include a toaster. I think it works great. I do recommend you check it out. So now that we have something like this, instead of just doing the result there like so, we're going to be actually adding in that session into the atom. So in order to do that, it's going to be very similar to what we have in root here. So firstly, we're going to grab this line, import use recoil state. Going to import that right there. And then we're going to go and grab that atom. So this one right here. Put that right there like so, alphabetical order once again. And we're going to go down here and we're going to be adding that in. So the first one is the user session, which we don't need. So it's going to put a comma. And then set user session is equal to use recoil state. And then we're going to pass in that atom there like that. And instead of doing this console log, we're just going to do if result.data.create user session. I'm going to do set user session, and I'm going to pass that right in, like so. And once you've done that, let's give it a go. Let's try it out. And you'll notice that we are able to do, say, for example, Lucas, which doesn't exist, with a random password. It broke. We do Bob with password, and it works. And we are logged in, which is great. So that's all working as it should. I'm going to remove my session again. Just one final thing to finish everything off is around here, I would like to have some more of a focus around a little bit of UX. So we're going to go here and do await new promise, and this one's not going to result, right? It's not going to do anything. And what that means is we can submit this, and right now it's submitting, but it's not going anywhere. But you notice that we don't have disabled on here, and we don't have a loading state on here. So what we're going to do is go into use form, add in our form state. Once we have that added in, we can simply do disabled on the input group equals form state.is submitting, and copy that, pass that into this other one here. And for the button, very similar, except we're going to do loading, because loading looks pretty cool. You can use disabled if you want, but loading gives you a nice little spinner. So now we can have a look again, press the button, and we get this kind of design, which is quite nice. And we can get rid of this one here, obviously. And then our submit and everything should still work. So there you go. Now we have the large form group defined with the inputs, and our login should be working. Let's try one more time. Lucas with random thing doesn't work very well. And it keeps popping this thing up, but I'm going to do Bob and password, and you see that it logs us in just fine.